Hello guys, I like cheese, and I like playing games. I am archiving myself, playing these story-driven games as an additional motivation since I always skip and save them for quote-unquote other days, whatever reason I come up with just to not play them. Also because I've been a sucker for live service games for so long that I didn't have the time to play all these great games through the years.
Dragon Quest I. Coming straight off DQ3, this one immediately feels different in a really interesting way. Where DQ3 was a sprawling adventure across a huge world with a customizable party and a job system to sink your teeth into, DQ1 strips everything back down to basics. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. This seems more story-focused compared to DQ3. There isn't much backstory to digest, but the story progression is more direct and feels more personal because of it. It's still not as straightforward as other JRPGs I've played, but the big bad enemy actually does bad things in this one. And we'll get into why that matters in a bit. Part of the bundle, coming off DQ3, the HD-2D treatment. The HD-2D visual upgrade made this game look genuinely great. I've seen what the original version looked like, and the difference is night and day. Taking what was essentially a very basic NES-era game and giving it the full HD-2D treatment, the lighting, the depth, the detail in the environments, elevates it way beyond what you'd expect from such an old foundation. If anything, the visual upgrade actually helps DQ1 more than DQ3. DQ3 already had a lot going on. DQ1 is simple, so the visuals carry more of the weight. And they deliver. The setting and world. Small but felt. With the overall story being short, it still feels compact without feeling lacking. The plot and progression don't feel cut short or incomplete. It's a straightforward story about a hero saving a princess and eliminating the main threat, and it commits to that premise cleanly. What I really liked is that they added subtle nods and Easter eggs that connect DQ1 to its chronological prequel, DQ3. Little things that reward you for having played DQ3 first. Descendants of characters you met, references to places you visited, callbacks to events from that game. It's a nice touch that makes the world feel continuous and lived in. Towns and NPCs, a world that feels the damage. This time around, the plot and environment felt better developed than I expected for such a short game. You can actually see the havoc that the Dragon Lord has done to the region. Towns in ruin, NPCs who talk about living under the shadow of the Dragon Lord's rule, people whose lives have been affected by his presence. Some NPCs are even descendants of people from DQ3, which is a really cool way to connect the two games. The world feels small but believable. You understand why this hero needs to exist. Story and narrative. The core plot. Simple but effective. The simplicity works here. The progression is direct, and because it's so focused, nothing feels padded or unnecessary. It's a hero's journey in the purest sense. You are the chosen one, the descendant of Erdrick, and you have one job. Save the princess, beat the Dragon Lord. The end. After some of the more complex political narratives of Suikoden and the convoluted lore of certain Final Fantasy games, there's something genuinely refreshing about a story that knows exactly what it is and executes it cleanly. The Dragon Lord, a villain who actually did things. Let me talk about the Dragon Lord, because this is something that stood out to me when comparing him to DQ3's villains. At least when compared to Baramos and Zoma from DQ3. Baramos barely did anything memorable aside from affecting that one town. He existed as a threat more in theory than in practice. Zoma was even more passive. He just had a silent ruling over Alefgard, made everything dark, but beyond that, nothing actively shown on screen. He was a looming presence more than an active villain. The Dragon Lord is different. He used monsters to invade towns. You go from town to town and you can see what his rule has actually done to the region. The NPCs tell you about it, the environment shows it. He feels like a villain who has genuinely been doing villain things before you even arrived. That makes the mission feel more urgent and more justified. It's a small thing, but having a villain who feels present and active in the world, even in a game this simple, goes a long way. The Dragon Lord's offer, out of pocket. The offer at the end, where the Dragon Lord essentially offers you a deal to rule half the world alongside him, felt very out of pocket when it happened. I honestly thought it was going to lead to some kind of alternate ending route, but the game treats it more like a dream or an illusion if you accept. At least that's how I understood it. It's an interesting moment that comes out of nowhere and then resolves itself quickly. A bit anticlimactic as a dramatic choice, but memorable enough that it sticks with you. Connection to DQ3. Callbacks that didn't exist before. The callbacks to DQ3 are really nice and worth highlighting, especially because technically, in the original DQ1, these Easter eggs couldn't have existed. DQ3 was made after DQ1, so a prequel connection wasn't possible back then. The remake added these connections specifically because now players can experience the Erdrick trilogy in chronological order, starting from DQ3. It's smart remake design that takes advantage of hindsight and adds genuine value for players coming from DQ3. The solo hero. No party system, just you and your hero. Coming from DQ3's flexible party system with jobs, synergies, and multiple characters to manage, going solo is a significant shift. And gameplay-wise, it's really hard. Not impossible, not unfair, but genuinely challenging in a way that forces you to play more carefully than you've probably needed to in any recent JRPG. The difficulty of going solo. It's actually quite annoying at times, to be honest. Bosses sometimes move twice in a single turn, and you're sitting there with one action trying to figure out your priority. Do you attack? Do you buff your offense? Do you use a defensive buff to survive the next hit? Do you heal before you die? That juggling act with just a single character is a lot more hectic than it sounds. In a party, you'd split those responsibilities across multiple characters. Here, it all lands on you, every single turn. One wrong priority decision and you're in trouble. It's engaging in a stressful kind of way. You feel every turn mattering in a way that party-based combat doesn't quite replicate. Resource management, the MP tightrope. With a solo hero, MP management becomes genuinely tense. You almost always need spells for group encounters, healing, buffs, but you have one pool of MP covering everything. It became more manageable once I figured out the rhythm of using zoom to fast travel back to an inn and recover, then heading back out. It's a loop, but it's a necessary one. Without that kind of resource management, the game would be significantly more brutal. Gameplay systems combat, stripped down but classic. The combat is as basic as it gets. The most stripped down version of Dragon Quest combat possible. One character, one action per turn, straightforward menus. And it's still a classic. The simplicity isn't a flaw so much as a reflection of what DQ1 is. The foundation that everything else was built on. It just lacks the synergy and depth that multiple party members bring. Buffs and combos only go so far when there's only one person doing everything. Difficulty and grinding. Since there's no party synergy to lean on, grinding to actually survive hits and deal substantial damage became necessary. I had to build up levels to have enough HP to tank boss hits, while also having enough resources left over to keep attacking. It's a different kind of grind compared to DQ3. In DQ3, grinding felt like optimization, getting the most out of your job system. In DQ1, grinding felt more like survival, getting strong enough that the solo difficulty doesn't kill you. Equipment and progression. It's a cool touch that the Erdrick gear from DQ3 appears here. Seeing that equipment show up in a game set chronologically after DQ3 is a nice bit of continuity. Since it's just the one hero though, and the story is short, the gear variety is a bit limited compared to DQ3. You're not building out a party with different gear types and roles. It's just equipping the best available piece for each slot and moving on. still fine for what the game is. The experience of finding upgrades still feels satisfying even at this small scale. No post-game. I'm actually okay with there being no post-game content here. Realistically, post-game content with a single party member would be incredibly punishing. The main game difficulty was already a juggling act. A post-game boss with no party would probably just be miserable. The game ends when the story ends, and that feels appropriate. Clean finish. Comparing to DQ3, what DQ3 did better? Pretty much everything mechanically. The job system, party synergy, world scale, post-game content, side content variety. DQ3 is clearly the more fully realized game, with more to do and more systems to engage with. What DQ1 does uniquely well. The solo difficulty creates a specific type of tension that party games can't replicate. Every decision matters more when there's no one to cover your mistakes. And the tight, focused story works precisely because the game is short. It doesn't overstay its welcome. The Erdrick connection to DQ3 also hits differently, having just come from that game. The callbacks feel earned and meaningful, rather than just fan service. Does it hold up as its own game? As a standalone game, it's a solid but short experience. As part of the bundle, coming straight off DQ3, it's a really enjoyable epilogue to that story. I think the bundle context makes it significantly better. Playing DQ1 right after DQ3 adds a layer of meaning that you'd miss going in cold. What worked? HD-2D visual upgrade. Genuinely makes the game look great. Dragonlord as a villain who visibly impacted the world. Tight, focused story that doesn't overstay its welcome. Erdrick gear and callbacks to DQ3 adding continuity. Solo difficulty creating genuine tension in every combat decision. NPC world building showing the real consequences of the Dragonlord's rule. What didn't work? Solo party, making combat sometimes more annoying than engaging. Boss double turns with no party support feeling unfair at times. Limited gear variety given the single character setup. The Dragonlord's offer feeling anticlimactic as a dramatic moment. No post-game, but understandably so given the solo structure. Final thoughts. I think they did a great job with this remake. It's a great game overall, even if it's light on replayability outside of challenge runs or difficulty modifiers. For what it is, a short, focused, classic JRPG experience, it's solid and worth the time. Playing it as part of the DQ1 and 2 bundle right after DQ3 was the right call. The context made everything hit better. The callbacks, the Erdrick gear, the world that still bears the scars of what happened in DQ3. As a standalone experience, it's good. As part of a chronological DQ journey, it's genuinely great. What's next? DQ2 is up next, and I'm going in without much knowledge of it. From what I've read in comments and posts, they really improved the game over the original version, which honestly makes me excited. If DQ1 was already this enjoyable despite its simplicity, seeing what DQ2 builds on top of it should be interesting. Pure discovery from here. Let's go!